It was the way the nurse didn't make eye contact when she wheeled me out into the discharge bay. I had blood dried behind my ear, a split lip, and a deep cut across my left shoulder. No broken bones, just bruises. And quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you ask yourself a question you're too embarrassed to say out loud. Will anyone come? I didn't expect flowers, or balloons, or anyone waiting with a car already warmed up. I just asked, one text, to the group chat labeled Fam Bam Red Heart. Need a ride from the ER. I sent a photo too. Nothing dramatic. Just my wristband, the 4 mark, the hospital name in the corner. My sister replied 6 minutes later. We're at Bottomless Brunch. Order an Uber. With a laughing emoji. As if my pain was punchline material. I read it once. Twice. Then replied. Will do. Didn't argue. Didn't guilt. Didn't beg. I slid my phone back into my pocket, nodded at the nurse, and walked outside into the sharp evening air. There was a bench near the exit. I sat there while my Uber app spun in circles. But something in my chest didn't feel right. Not physical. Not yet. It was the realization that, even in my worst moment, my family chose brunch, and mimosas, and Instagram photos with captions like, Saturdays are for sisters. 12 hours later, after I'd gone home alone, after the painkillers had worn off, something changed. Inside me. And around me. Because at 11:14 p.m., my sister's phone rang. She picked up. Probably still tipsy. Probably still laughing. The voice on the other end wasn't mine. It belonged to a police officer. And his words turned the air in her lungs to cement. Are you listed as the emergency contact for name? She said yes, still half smiling, until he added, he stopped breathing 12 minutes ago. She told me later that she dropped the phone, right there in the booth, between a half-eaten omelet and her second mimosa. The officer had said 12 minutes. She probably spent 10 of those brushing off the ring. Too loud, too busy, too full of herself to care. The brunch crowd fell silent when she screamed. Not out of guilt, out of fear, because for the first time, she realized I could actually disappear. They'd found me at home, collapsed on the bathroom floor. All that just bruises stuff? Turns out, internal bleeding doesn't send a courtesy text. The EMT who showed up said I was minutes from losing consciousness completely. He found the Uber receipt on the kitchen counter, crumpled, unread. A bottle of prescription meds untouched. My name barely whispered when they lifted me onto the gurney. I flatlined once. Came back. Flatlined again. Then I stabilized. The hospital called it lucky. The doctor called it a delay in proper care. I called it something else. A moment I'll never forget, not because I almost died, but because of who didn't show up. When I woke up in ICU, the lights were dim. My sister was there. Mascara smudged. Hoodie borrowed. She sat stiff in the visitor's chair. Why didn't you tell me it was that bad? She whispered. I didn't answer. Not right away. Because here's the truth. I had. Every message, every call, every small sign over the years that said, I need you. She'd laughed off. Dismissed. Swatted like a gnat. And now, suddenly, she cared? Because someone in uniform told her I stopped breathing? No. That wasn't love. That was consequence. I turned my head toward the window. Spoke without looking at her. You told me to call Uber. Uber doesn't sit at the ICU all night. She flinched. But I didn't. Because something in me had already shifted. I wasn't just her little brother anymore. I was a man who survived being forgotten. And now, I was remembering everything. She tried. Oh, she tried. The next morning she brought coffee. My favorite, or what she thought was. Hazelnut, no sugar. I hadn't touched that order in 3 years. She sat by my bed like we were starring in some sad movie, waiting for forgiveness to roll in with the credits. I didn't say much. Didn't give her what she came for. Because this wasn't about mimosas. It wasn't about brunch. It was about every single moment she taught me, without saying it out loud, that her comfort mattered more than my survival. I didn't think it was serious, she whispered. That's the problem, I said. You never do. Her face crumbled, but I didn't hand her a tissue. I'd stopped cleaning up after her long ago. By the time the rest of the family showed up, late, of course, they brought flowers and stories. We were about to text you. We didn't know how to help. Maybe next time give us more of a heads up. Next time. Like grief books appointments. Like near-death sends calendar invites. I nodded politely. Listen like a man being offered a contract he had no intention of signing. That evening, when they left, I asked the nurse to turn off visitor access. Just for one night. And in the quiet, I wrote one message. Not for them. For the officer who called her. I found his name in the discharge report. Typed slowly, carefully. Then sent. You saved my life. Not because you showed up, but because you saw what no one else did. Thank you. He replied 3 hours later. Simple. No one should ever have to dial out of their own family for help. I read it twice and felt something loosen in my chest. Because he was right. I shouldn't have had to, but I did. And now that I had, I wasn't going back. I was discharged on a Tuesday. No balloons. No fanfare. Just a wheelchair, a clipboard, and a nurse who smiled like she knew I was walking out of more than just a hospital. My sister offered to drive me home. I said no. Called the same officer who made the call. He picked me up without a second of hesitation. The ride was quiet, comfortable, safe. He didn't ask questions, just turned the radio down and said, "Let me know if you need anything else." And in that moment I realized he was more of a brother than my actual one ever was. When I got home, I started cleaning. Not the apartment, my life. I left the family group chat. Not with drama. Just a quiet exit. The kind they couldn't argue with because silence doesn't leave fingerprints. I boxed up old birthday cards. Took down framed photos from years that no longer counted. Wiped the digital slate too. Block numbers, archived threads, filtered my inbox. And then I wrote an open letter. Not for revenge. For clarity. I posted it anonymously on a local blog that covered first responder stories. The title read, "The day my emergency contact chose brunch." I didn't name names. Didn't need to. I told the story exactly how it happened. The text. The Uber. The collapse. The silence. I ended it with this. Sometimes, it takes almost dying to finally choose who's allowed to stand beside your life. And sometimes, the person who saves you isn't the one you grew up with, it's the one who shows up when everyone else is sipping champagne. It was like, same. This broke me. You are not alone. And I believed them. For the first time, I truly did. I didn't answer her calls. Not the missed one at 7:12 a.m. Not the follow-up text at 7:13. Did you write that? Not the voicemail she left crying at 7:18. Because I had nothing left to explain. She had stepped over my pain. Sipped around it. Dismissed it with a joke. And now that the world had seen her reflection in the mirror I held up, she didn't like the angle. The article spread. Friends shared it. Colleagues whispered about it. Even our pastor forwarded it to the church group chat with a quiet, haunting caption. May we all show up before it's too late. My mom called too. I didn't pick up. Because the last time she spoke to me, it was to say, "Why didn't you plan better?" As if survival was a schedule I failed to follow. My inbox started filling with stories from strangers, nurses, EMTs, even a woman who lost her brother at brunch, too. I read every word, because they weren't just stories. They were stitches. And I was still bleeding. That night, I got a knock at my door. Not loud, just firm. I opened it to find my sister. No makeup, red eyes, holding a card in one hand and my favorite sandwich in the other, the one she never got right. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You already said it," I replied. "At brunch." She stood there like she wanted to fall apart. But I didn't catch her. I'd done that too many times before. I took the sandwich, closed the door, and left the card on the welcome mat. Inside, I sat alone, but not lonely, because for the first time, I knew exactly who I was. and exactly who I no longer needed to be. She posted a statement. 3 paragraphs. Black text on a white background. No emojis. No filters. It read like a confession wrapped in PR. I failed my brother when he needed me. I chose comfort over compassion, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. She didn't tag me, but she didn't need to. The internet connected the dots. People reshared the blog post with her apology. Some forgave her. Others didn't. I didn't care either way, because the story was no longer about her. It was about me, surviving what I wasn't supposed to survive, standing where no one thought I would. I didn't reply, didn't call, didn't validate her redemption arc. Instead, I made a quiet decision. I updated my emergency contact. Not to her. Not to anyone in my family. To Officer Harris, the man who saw a stranger and acted like family. I texted him. Hope it's okay. I listed you. He replied instantly. Of course. I've got your 6. That was it. No drama. No guilt. Just something I'd never had from my actual bloodline: consistency. Later that week, I got an invite to a family healing dinner. My sister wanted to host. Said it was time to talk things through. I RSVP'd no. Didn't even hesitate. Because you don't heal by sitting in the same room that broke you. You heal by building your own. And I was doing exactly that. One boundary at a time. I was invited to speak. A community panel, small, local, for survivors of medical neglect and family estrangement. The organizer had read the blog post. Said it struck a nerve. Said people needed to hear the rest. I almost said no. Then I remembered the silence in the ER. The buzz of my unanswered phone. The sound of my own breath slipping away. I said yes. The room wasn't packed, but it was full of something better. Truth. People who didn't pretend. People who'd been hurt and healed anyway. I took the mic. Hands steady. Voice clear. I didn't name my sister. Didn't list every betrayal. I didn't need to. Instead, I said, family is not who shares your blood. Family is who waits outside your ICU room when no one else comes. Family answers when pain calls, not when the news does. They listened. Some cried. One woman came up to me after and said, "Thank you for saying what we've all felt, but we're too scared to admit." That night, my sister texted again. Just 4 words. "You embarrass me publicly." I stared at it for a second, then replied, "You ignored me privately." No more messages followed, and I didn't need them to, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity, peace, and finally learning to choose myself unapologetically. Months passed. No drama, no apologies, just distance, the kind that finally feels like peace. I moved cities, took a job at a local nonprofit, the same one that hosted the panel. I helped others navigate what I had barely survived, being abandoned while still breathing. I never told anyone in my family I was leaving. No forwarding address, no final text, because sometimes healing isn't a conversation, it's a quiet exit. One evening, the news ran a feature, a short segment about the growing role of bystanders in emergency response. They featured a few cases. One of them was mine. They replayed the original call, my sister's laugh, the officer's voice breaking as he said, "He stopped breathing 12 minutes ago." I sat alone in my apartment as it aired. No tears, no rage, just the soft realization. They'd heard it now too. Every person who once shrugged me off. My story wasn't hidden anymore, and neither was their silence. 2 days later, I received a letter. No return address. Just 5 words on the first page. I finally understand. I'm sorry. No name. But I recognized the handwriting. I folded the paper. Didn't tear it. Didn't respond. Because I didn't need an apology. I needed a life. And I'd finally started living one, without depending on people who only show up when it's too late. I sat back in my chair, stared at the skyline outside, and whispered to myself, not in bitterness, but in calm. They lost me the moment I needed them most, and I smiled, because I was no longer asking for rides. I was driving my own story now. Some losses aren't loud. They don't come with screaming matches or slammed doors. Sometimes, it's just a single unanswered message, and a silence that cuts deeper than betrayal ever could. She laughed while I bled. They brunched while I begged. And yet, I didn't choose revenge. I chose to heal quietly, deliberately, fully. Because family isn't who shares your last name. It's who holds your hand when you're too weak to lift your own. And the day I nearly died, I learned who that was and who it wasn't. So here's the question that lingers. When someone calls you in pain, do you answer? Or do you leave them wondering if they ever mattered at all? I don't hate them, but I no longer hope they'll change because I